Now we're going to do a lighting pass on the level. Before we do the lighting pass, I just want to say that lighting in itself is a very big topic. It can have its own separate tutorial on how to do different lighting styles, what all the values mean inside of the Unreal Editor, different lighting effects, and whatnot. That is a whole separate almost field aside from level design, is just environment lighting. But what we're going to do is just do a decent path on lighting to make this level have some contrast and feel that it is in a night setting with some orange color torches. So for this tutorial, I'm not going to go into too much depth on what all the values mean and why the values are certain ways, but just follow along with the values I present, and along the way I will explain a few bits of what things mean. So let's get started. What we're going to do first is add in an environment color to the entire scene. So to do this, we're going to go to View, go to our World Properties, and then you want to scroll down until you see Light Mass, expand this, and then expand your Light Mass settings, like this. What we're going to do here is we're going to leave the static lighting level scale at 1, if it's not 1 already. Your number of indirect light bounces at 3, and the light color, the environment color, you want to expand this and click on the little color here. What you can do is you can actually drag this around and pick your color, but for the sake of this tutorial I will tell you the exact color I used on the original level. So in the hex space you want to type in 009 CA9DC and hit OK. Make it kind of a purplish color. Then we can minimize this, and then we want to go to our environment intensity. This is set to 2. This is how strong the intensity of the environment light will be. And our emissive boost will be at 1. Our diffuse boost will be at 1. Our indirect normal influence boost will be at 0.3. Make sure your ambient occlusion is checked. Your direct illumination occlusion fraction is at 0.5. Indirect illumination occlusion fraction is 1. And occlusion exponent, we're going to set this to 2.5. And then your fully excluded samples fractions 1, and max occlusion distance at 400. Most of these values are the default values, but I just went over them to make sure that you have the exact same settings when you're doing this lighting pass. So for now we are done with our environment lighting. So we can close this out, and then if we hit light, the lit mode button, you see our level now has kind of a purplish tint, but it's still not to the quality of making it look like a night map. So let's go back to unlit mode and we will work on the dominant directional light next. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add in lighting to our level using the dominant directional light. The dominant directional light is basically the main light source for the entire level. In previous versions of Unreal level editing, you'd have to put multiple point lights to get the level to look a certain way. But now with the dominant directional light, you get one light actor that does all the work for you. But to use a dominant directional light, we need a light mass importance volume. If you recall from the first tutorial, the template level had a light mass importance volume, but we deleted it because we did not need it at the time. What we're going to do is we're going to add in a light mass importance volume again, and the reason we need a light mass importance volume is that if we just build the level with the dominant directional light, everything in the scene will be lit. And what happens is that when you want to build your lighting, it will take a very, very long time because the dominant directional light is trying to light the entire scene. But what we want to do is we want to put a light mass importance volume on what we find to be important. For this scene, what is important is these rocks, our main architecture, the waterfall, basically this area here. The skybox area with all the mountains and the sky, that's not very important to light. It will get lit, but the point is that we don't want to waste our time and memory on lighting the entire space. But what we want to do is just light the scene that is important to us. So we're going to build a light mass importance volume around the important part of the scene. I may have said some redundant things there about importance, but hopefully you got the point that the light mass importance volume lights what we find to be important to our level. So what we're going to do is we're going to select our builder brush, and then we're going to go to the toolbar on the left and click geometry mode. Once we have geometry mode on, we can adjust the vertices of this builder brush so that we can encase it around our level. What we want to do is we want to go to wireframe mode by hitting the brush wireframe button, and then changing our viewport by hitting this P button to a top view. With geometry mode on and in top view with a wireframe, hold Control and Alt and select these vertices, and then using your mover widget, move it over so that we are to the edge of the waterfall, maybe just a little bit more like this, and then select the right side of your builder brush and move it to the back end of our building that is in the back side of the scene, and then select these top vertices and move them over. And then these lower vertices, again using Control and Alt at the same time, move it over. So from a top view, we have encased this portion of our scene inside what we want to be our light mass importance volume. But we're not done yet. We need to change our viewport, our view one more time. So hitting this T button, our top view, we will go to a front view. With a front view, you want to zoom in and select the top vertices, and then adjust the vertices up so that we come to the top of this tree right here, and then drag the lower vertices down, and then we want to go to our side view and then make sure that we expand the light mass importance volume out to the left and to the right just a little bit. And if we go back to our perspective view and then turn on unlit mode, you will see that the builder brush is now encased inside what we find to be important to our level. We can now turn off geometry mode and go back to camera mode. And with our builder brush still selected, you want to go down to volumes on the left side, right click, and add a light mass importance volume. If you click your builder brush again, it'll go back to the original scale. But if you look where we had our boundary, there's a yellow volume now. This yellow volume indicates your light mass importance volume. Now that we have the light mass importance volume, we can now edit the properties of our dominant directional light to light in the space encased inside of our volume, and not the entire level. Now that we have the light mass importance volume, what we want to do is we want to adjust our dominant directional light actor. The dominant directional light actor looks like this. So just select it, and what we're going to do is we're going to go to our lit mode. And an important thing is that the position of the light dominant directional light actor doesn't matter as much as the rotation does. If I change my widget to rotation, you'll see something really cool happen as I move the light around. You see that the moon actor in the back is attached to the light, and as I move my light around, the direction of the light and the shadows change. I can change the angle any which way I like. And if I look out in my sky, I can see the moon moving along with my movement widget and getting moon rays from different directions. So up to you, you can change the position to whatever you feel like to get a certain effect on your level. But for this tutorial, what I did is put the moon roughly in the center behind this mountain so that the majority of the light is hitting the center of the scene and the shadows are hitting the left and right side of the scene. So I just kind of adjust it, getting a preview of what the shadows look like. Something like that works just fine. I can even lower it or raise it up just a bit. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to change the properties of the dominant directional light. So with it selected, we're going to right click and go to the properties. What you want to do is go to light, light component, and then light component again. For this light, our brightness is going to be 0.9, and the light color, just click on this color bar. Again, you can play around with whatever color you feel like, but see, as I change it, you can see that the color of the world, the dominant directional light, is changing. But for the purposes of this tutorial, the exact value I used is, the hex value is FF8D9FBF. If I hit OK, I get a dark blue shade. Next, what you want to do is minimize this and then go to your light shafts. Light shafts are the moon rays or sun rays you see coming off of the dominant directional light. Like these. And for this one, leave the occlusion depth range at 20,000, leave your bloom scale at 2, your bloom threshold at 0.5. Alright? And then what the main thing we want to change is the tint of this bloom, of the bloom of the light shaft. So everything else is on the default value. So again, you can play with the color whatever you feel like, but we want something that matches a moonlight scene. So for this, the hex value I used is 00BCE0FF. Hit OK. And then we're done with our dominant directional light. And as you can see, we're starting to get more of a nighttime feel on this visual scene. But we have one more step left, which is post-processing, to add in a kind of a tint to the overall visual scene. Now that we have the dominant directional light set, what we're going to do is we're going to add a post-process volume around our level. So right now I have the level in unlit mode. I can turn it back to lit mode. And what I'm going to do is hit the builder brush cube and build a brush of 256, 256, 256. This is usually the default, but just in case you don't have it, you can set these values and hit build. Similar to the light mass importance volume, we're just going to expand this builder brush to a volume that we need to use to encase the level inside of the post-process tint. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to geometry mode, and then we're going to change our viewport to the top view, and then all we're going to do is use Control and Alt at the same time to make a selection box around these vertices, and then using our mover widget, just expand it out just a bit outside of our level. But big enough that it encases most of our visual scene. And then we're going to change our viewport one more time to a side view and make sure this is encased in the vertical direction as well. Sorry, that was a front view, not a side view. And now we're going to go to a side view, and as we can see, most of our level is pretty much inside of it, but we can expand it to the left and to the right. Then we go back to our perspective view, and then if we go to volumes, right click, we're going to go post-process volume. And again, if you hit your builder brush and go back to camera mode, you'll see that there's now a purple color volume around our level. This is the post-process volume. With it selected, you want to go to its properties. So right click, post-process volume properties. And there's a lot of settings in here. And again, there's a whole, you can make a whole separate tutorial based on just how to do post-processing. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to just cover some of the settings that I have. So make sure that your bloom is on. And what we're going to do is we're going to go to our bloom scale and change this to a value of 0.9. And then what we're going to do is go all the way to the bottom where you see scene highlights, midtones, and shadows. This is all post-process is important, but this is where you set the tint colors. As a high-level overview, scene highlights, this is your brightness values, and a good rule of thumb is that you want these values to go below 1 towards 0, and that gives you a red color in your scene. And the midtones are your blues, so you want these values to go towards 2, so that will give you a more blue color in your scene. And the shadows, you usually don't mess with these too much, but you can adjust the value just by a little bit to get more darker shadows. But since this is a nighttime scene, I'm going to change some of these values in the direction to give me a more cooler blue color as a tint in my visual scene. So to begin, I'm going to go to my scene highlights, and instead of pushing them towards 0, I'm actually going to bump these up a little bit to give me a blue color. So the X value in the highlights is going to be 1.1, the Y value is going to be 1.1, and the Z value is going to be 1.1. You can see the shade of the level change just a little bit. So we're going to minimize our highlights, and we're going to go to our midtones. And the midtone values, the X is 1.3. As you can see, we're getting a more blue color now. And the Y is 1.1, and the Z is 1.1. For this scene, I did not mess with the shadows, but as an example, you can set the shadows to a very small number increment of like 0.001 or 0.01, and you can see there's some small changes in the shadows. But for this tutorial, I have set the values of all the shadows to 0, 0, and 0. And that is it for our post-process. And as you can see, we're starting to get more of a nighttime feel with some really crisp shadows between our rocks and our walls and other places around the level. Next we're going to do is fog, and then the local lighting of the torches to add a contrast to our nighttime scene. Now we're going to add a little bit of fog to our scene. From the beginning, in our template map, there is a fog actor that we had. We never deleted it, so if you look up, there should be this little dragon looking dude. If you click it, this is our exponential height fog. What we want to do is we want to go to the properties of this guy, right click on it, and then the component fog properties are opened up. What we want to do is we're going to change some of these values. So for our fog intensity, we're going to change it to 0.03. The fall off is going to remain at 0.5. The opacity will remain at 1. The star distance at 512. Light terminator angle will stay at 20. And our opposite light brightness will be at 0.75. And the color for our brightness, opposite light brightness, instead of black, it's actually going to be, the hex value will be 003,74654. Hit OK. And then for our light and scattering brightness, we're going to change it to 2.5, sorry, and then change the color to, and we're not going to change the color on this, we're going to leave it as is. And that is it for our fog. And what you can do is you can actually move this around in the level, and you can see a difference in where the fog is. So if we move it lower, we have less fog, and if we move it higher up, you start to see the fog volume take more effect on the level. The position of the fog is up to you. The higher up I move it, there's more volumetric fog, and if it's too high up, we lose our skybox. We really can't see it because there's too much fog. But we want it at a nice level where we see our visual scene and our skybox and the night sky. So something like that gives a nice nighttime misty feel to the visual scene.